Patrick Harders, Audacious Nimby, welcome back. We've got a lot to cover tonight. We're going to do a recap. We're going to talk about what's been going on in Prince William County, how it's affecting you. So there's a lot to go over. A couple weeks ago, I said, wow, we were in a number of different national publications, Wall Street Journal, Politico, Fox News, all were discussing Prince William County. Today, President Trump tweeted about Prince William County. We are a county that just has a lot going on. And so we never sleep when it comes to politics. This is the most active county in the state of Virginia by far. More going on, more issues going on. And so we're going to dive deep into it. First thing I want to talk about is the Board of Supervisors meeting on March 3rd. And if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and tune in. You know, really what I've learned from years of watching it is go to public comment time. There's so much you can learn from public comment time, and then just forward to the last couple minutes. If you really want to and you're bored, you could just go right to the end and see the vote. You usually know how it's going to turn out in Prince William County, and this one was no different. But there was some fireworks at this. There's some great public comment time. George Stewart had a great speech, great communication with the people. But there are some other things that were discussed. So it's Prince William County. This is going to be about data centers. So, of course, even though we're well beyond what the county experts recommended, we've doubled the amount of space that we should have already approved. And now we're looking at Hornbaker, another set of data centers. And we have some interesting things. Kenny, Supervisor Bodie, you know, he discussed this as a very divisive issue. And it's something that we're all grappling with, trying to create a framework on how to deal with this. Now, think about this statement. Think of how many times Supervisor Bodie has said yes to data centers. Think of how many millions. I mean, we're looking at like 100 million square feet of data centers that he's approved. And we're now looking to create some kind of framework. And we're talking about how to make some renewable energy there, as if that's going to be enough at this point. We still have diesel generators that are still going to have to go in. We still have potential turbines. You still have the water intrusion, building on top of watersheds and not doing the water study. That's something that still hasn't been done. But Supervisor Bodie is grappling with this issue. So hopefully you could rest assured. The other one that was a great comment was Supervisor Bailey. Now, if you remember when it came to Bristow data center, Bristow campus, much more humbler Supervisor Bailey. She said, you know, we're all learning here. We're all going through a process. We're all learning. You know, to many of us who have been sitting in that room, have been speaking in front of the dais and saying like, no, we're not learning. We took time to understand what the dangers were. This isn't an educational process we're going through. Sure, we're always learning more and more dangers and more damages that are happening, but we're not learning on the job. And at that time, and this wasn't that long ago, this was last June, July, something like that, she said, we're all learning here. Now, this meeting was much different. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse in my voice. She's no longer learning. She was there to help educate our citizens. So you are the ones that need to learn. You're the ones that don't know what you're talking about. Oh, we've been failing our citizens since the 90s. And thank goodness Supervisor Bailey is there to educate you. So you could learn about data centers, because she has said no. Yeah, there's one, I think one data center that she said no to. So she did tout that experience. But who is the king of no? You all know it. It's the person who popped in your mind. You knew it was Supervisor Tom Gordy. He is the king of no when it comes to data centers. Just ask Victor Angry. Supervisor Angry gave him that title as the king of no. And, you know, was proclaiming what amazing work he's done, what vision he's had, and how he brought this deal, and how history is going to remember him so kindly for being able to say no to data centers. So did Tom Gordy say no to this data center? No, he was the king of yes on this one. Shocked everybody, shocked nobody, but, you know, surprising that he passed a data center. Obviously, you know, he took on the mantle from Janine Lawson. Supervisor Lawson, you know, got blamed at the very beginning for some data centers. And we're talking like 2017, 2018, when it was a much different industry. You know, the data centers were 40 feet tall, much smaller. much less energy. They didn't become these monolithic, huge structures. We didn't have many of them. We had an overlay that we were following. And, really, once the people spoke out, Supervisor Lawson became our biggest advocate, and she fought for us against this intrusion of data centers. So those are all interesting. Obviously, Supervisor Gordy was her planning commissioner, and a lot of people who campaigned for him were hoping to get, Supervisor Lawson 2.0, like understanding all the issues and struggles that we had been fighting. And obviously that hasn't happened. And Supervisor Gordy was the deciding vote to pass this data center. But I think what I want to draw your attention to was a great speech. So obviously I mentioned Supervisor Stewart's speech, but Chair Jefferson gave a phenomenal speech. It's a speech we've been waiting for. It's what we've wanted to hear. And I want to tell you something. I am a Republican. I am a conservative, Ronald Reagan. I believe in small government. I believe in the First Amendment rights. I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm a conservative. I lean libertarian. I like government to be small and leave me alone. And I believe that people are best helping out other people. But ultimately, and especially local government, but I think it's true nationally too, like what we want is good people. I could have a difference in agreement. If we get into school funding, and, I was given a lot of grief during the election when I said, I just thought that the sharing, the profit sharing that we had, that agreement with the school, was just a lazy way to do accounting. I got criticized by a lot of people for that I was defunding the school. But I think the way I looked at it is, they wanted to protect the schools, and we want the best education. Like, I wanted a higher investment per pupil. I wanted teachers to get paid more, and I wanted to look at efficiencies on staffing, because typically in the admin side is where you see waste. But when you have good people and they're looking to, protect their community and just have different ways of doing it, we could find a lot of agreement. It's when you have corrupt people and you have people, making deals for themselves and somehow, retiring or going into land deals as soon as they walk out of office. That's where I have issue. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you're a crook, you're a crook. I mean, it's just the way you are. And they're on both sides of the party. So, what I like to do in this is, especially on this local side, and I don't get into the national politics here. I don't think it really has a place, because we have so much that brings us together locally, that I think that's more important for us. And, I'll say it over and over again. Your local government affects you more than the national government. Sure, there's some big things that they have going on, but your local government can actually affect your home, where you live, what your community looks like, what your future is going to look like. So when somebody's doing good, I don't care if they're a Democrat, if they're a Republican, if they're an independent, I'm going to give them credit. And Chair Jefferson did a fantastic job. Something that I've spoken to her many times. I'm like, this is the message we need. And she hit a home run. So we're going to play this message so you could hear it, but phenomenal job. And this is what we've been waiting for.
Concern. We keep talking about how the price of land is going up and up and up, and it is because of data centers. But we can also say no. We don't say no. People buy up land, they send out letters to people, creating assemblages, doing whatever. It's because this board rarely says no. This land could have been something else. They did come back and say, okay, one data center, and then the rest of the land would be something else. We still could have said no, but we're not saying no. Data centers are not eating at our restaurants. They're not buying from our stores. They're creating a lot of temporary jobs. They're raising the cost of land, and they're pricing out other businesses. And yet we're not going to say no. Earlier, we talked about ending the overlay. I abstained from that because there are a lot of considerations. And there are a lot of people who previously didn't want to get rid of the overlay who are now ready to do so. We talked about sustainability, putting more money in the budget for sustainability. But the most sustainable thing that we can do is start to say no. We don't want to say no. So the price of land is going to continue to rise because we cannot say no. We're going to price out other businesses because we cannot say no. I do appreciate the work that has gone on into this, but we can't say no. So we are going to have more data centers, overlay or not, because we can't say no. We're going to continue to price out other businesses because we can't say no. Being on the board of county supervisors is a responsibility. I ran because I wanted to do things for the community, and I had a vision of who we can be and what we should be. But that vision is not driven by the board. It is not driven by us. It is driven by developers. There are some projects I agree to, some I do not. But I'm also tired of sitting up here and having these discussions when I know how the vote is going to go. We cannot say no. So we're going to say yes, this is going to pass. Let's not pretend it's not. I appreciate everyone coming out, but this is going to pass. We're going to have other projects that are going to come to before this board, and they're going to pass. And then we're going to lament, we're going to talk about sustainability and other issues, and we're pricing businesses out. We need diversification, but we're not going to stop it. We are going to say yes to every project. We can say no. We lack the political will to do so. And it is very tiring. I get so many emails, say no to this, say no to that. I'm a no. But it's not going to stop it. I'm not afraid to say no. The word no, you could say it in French, it's no. In Spanish, it's no. We are too afraid to say no. We are too afraid to say that we have enough. And why is that? Why can we not look at other things? Why can't we entertain other ideas? Why do we always have to jump at the data center? Because someone is saying that this is the best use of the space. It's because we can't say no. It's too hard. It's abdicating our responsibility. So
you heard Chair Jefferson. What did she speak about? Data centers are raising our price of land. We have assemblages going on. My last podcast talked about the assemblages. Only Prince William County has assemblages where tens of thousands of acres are being contracted out by politicians so that they could flip them over for housing or whatever they're looking to do. It's hurting job growth. These are creating temporary jobs, not permanent jobs in our community. They don't shop at our stores. They don't eat at our restaurants. Just the temporary workers do, and they're in and out very quickly in their building, and then they disappear. Typical data center is only going to have 20 to 30 people working in a normal data center. They use a ton of water, everything else. So many issues with them. But what her speech really said is we don't have the ability to say no. That's powerful. That's what we've been saying. And the other thing that I really took away from it was she said we're not leading. We're allowing developers to lead. And that was one of the things that I spoke out that I think resonated with so many of you is we want our elected officials to have some vision. Like what do we want this community to look like? And that was what she spoke about. She said, we need to promote our vision, not developers' vision. We don't sit back and wait for the developers, and we have to be able to say no. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s. And, when we grew up, it was different, much different world back then. I think we had parents, but, we just ran around. The old joke is we drank out of the hose because our parents didn't want us in the house. That was true. We had no cell phones. And what we did to each other, we rode around on our bikes and we were like little gangs of 10-year-old kids on their bicycles riding around and, just roam the neighborhoods. And, what we did is we actually made fun of each other by picking on what was the most insecure thing we had about ourselves. So we became a real tough Gen X. If there's any Gen Xers, you know what I'm talking about. We were mean to each other. Like we were tough. And we had a word, if there's a guy that couldn't say no, like he got walked all over. He had a lot of bad choices in life because he didn't have the power to say no. Another word for girls that couldn't do it, and I'm not going to even talk about that. But yeah, you have to be able to say no, because if you don't say no to things, anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And the same thing is if you don't say no to things, then you're passing up on other opportunities. If Hornbaker doesn't go there, are there better uses for the land? And I know Supervisor Gordy was a hero, and history is going to look on him in a marvelous light because he moved a power line or did something that was just magical. It was unbelievable past this data center, and it's a great project. I know that's what the proponents of the uh, data centers were saying and how magnificent it was, but I thought it was a total failure. Like at this point, after what we went through in the last big data center battle, and we actually won one to fall back into, well, this is a good data center, and we're trying to create a framework, and we need to educate our citizens. No, we need to learn to say just two simple words that I loved. No is no. It's no in English. No is no in Spanish and French. It's no. Everybody knows what it means. You have to have the courage to say no. The flip side of that, it's not just being a captain of no, and not just that's all you are. You're not just a no person, but it's because you're saying no because you're looking for a better vision, and there's a better vision. And we're hearing more and more people talking about, we're hearing the rumbling of redevelopment, reinvestment, looking at the Sudley corridor, looking at Woodbridge, looking at where we could have open space down in the Woodbridge district. I'm excited for that. And so this was a setback, another kick in the teeth by our supervisors where people come in, they plead their case, and you know, it's just a real quick vote. Everybody knew what was going to happen. The fix was in. Chair Jefferson said, "We all know how you're going to vote on this," and that's what they did. So it's unfortunate. We need to hold these politicians accountable when they come back to their district. If you live in Four Seasons and you're talking with Supervisor Bailey, who considers data centers to be what did she say, the thorn in our existence, she votes for him every single time. She didn't vote for one of them, and now all of a sudden these are the thorn. Why do you vote for them if they're the thorn in our existence? Why can't we pause on them? Why can't you say, hey, let's delay this a year. Let's delay it 2 years, 5 years. I don't care. Kick it down the road and see what else comes available. See what other opportunities come available, what other developers are going to come available if we learn to say no. So great job, Supervisor Stewart. Great job, Supervisor Vega. Great job, Supervisor Jefferson. That was fantastic. Very proud of the three of you. We need to be more consistent, and get one more. And so that's part 2 of this discussion tonight. So, I mentioned earlier that President of the United States tweeted out Prince William County. That's because we had an election. Obviously, Margaret Franklin had moved up and had taken another seat. And so now we had an election that happened last night, and it was exciting. So this is for the Woodbridge district. And, I made a joke yesterday. I've heard a lot of people say a similar joke, but who had their bingo cards filled out that had the Gainesville district having a Democrat supervisor and the Woodbridge district having a Republican supervisor? Nobody thought that was going to happen. It hasn't happened in 37 years. And actually, last time it happened at the same time. I was looking it up, and you could check that and make sure that's true. But I think both districts flipped about 37 years ago, and it's an unusual thing for that to happen. So this was highly unusual. Most people didn't expect it. We have Supervisor Jeannie LaCroix. And just to give history, and many of you know this, I've known Supervisor LaCroix for many years. And, she's been a great friend. I'm really excited for her. She's a very nice person. She worked in real estate. I think she did court recording as well. Knows everybody in her community, was fighting for Belmont Bay. They got taken advantage of, and I would see her at supervisor meetings. She's not afraid to speak up. I think she leans, I would say I'm further right on the political side than she would probably be. But she's really strong. And the best thing, I heard somebody who knows her really well tell me today, goes, you know what? She is just full of integrity. And so we're really excited for that. There was some worry on it, and I'll talk about that. But the race came out because the Democrats had a primary. Mohammed, and I might pronounce this wrong, Soufain, goes by Seth Chasm. He was the Democrat nominee in the Democrat stronghold. So it was assumed he should win. Pam Montgomery, she was the anointed one. She was the one that was was donned the ring and everyone said she is going to be the supervisor, but the people spoke and they elected Seth. And I was actually excited for that because, Pam comes right from, I think she was chief of staff for Supervisor Franklin, who voted yes on pushed every single data center possible. And so I wasn't excited to see her get in office. And, with Seth, he came in and said, I'm not for data centers. I'm like, all right, well, we have two candidates, a Democrat and the Republican candidate in the Woodbridge district are both standing up against data centers. So, we were asked this question a lot, like, are people against data centers? Yes, even Woodbridge people, the supervisors, are against data centers. And I'm going to venture to say in this next election in Prince William County, there will not be one supervisor running outside of the three that are 3 or 4, it depends on how you look at it, that are in office if they run for re-election. Besides that, nobody else is going to be pro data center. You can't be. In the Gainesville district, they asked me, like, is everybody anti-data center? Like, in the Gainesville district, yes, you're anti-data center if you live here. If you just moved in like the week before, you probably become that. But there was concerns. Jeannie LaCroix's match, I'll give you an inside behind the scenes. There's a lot of dirt that came up on Seth. Old tweets, I think it was, or old posts from like 2011, 2013. There was a Republican operative, Brian Landrum, who had found him and put him out. And to tell you the truth, I was a little worried. I was worried that Pam Montgomery was going to make a surge. And that for us would have been rough because, we need a person that's going to be for smart growth, and we need somebody that's going to fight the data centers, and that would not be Pam Montgomery. So they strung that needle. They made it happen. But it was really, I think it was Jeannie LaCroix made it happen. She did the door knocking. She's a good person. She has a great reputation and, great smile, friendly as can be, is able to walk across party lines, is able to work with people. So, really, really great campaign. It was a short one. The total votes came to Jeannie LaCroix got 1,694 votes. Seth got 1,436, 258 vote difference. Pam Montgomery got 747. So Pam Montgomery did play the spoiler. And this is somebody asked, I heard a quote from a reporter, like, well, do you think this is some kind of mandate? Do you think this? I said, yeah, Republicans will always win in Woodbridge if two Democrats decide to face off against each other. But it does open it up. I think when the people of Woodbridge get to see Supervisor LaCroix and see what type of person she is, and providing she's out there fighting for her community, she's fighting against data center sprawl, she's fighting against the expansion of our power bills going up and power lines going everywhere, and then also looks at smart growth. So we get some open space in the Woodbridge district and the eastern end of the county. We look at more open space in the western end, and we reinvest into Woodbridge and Manassas. I think as that message comes out, people will really understand, the power of that message, and she could be a supervisor for a long time. So that's all we have going on. Nothing major in Prince William County, just another data center, another election, a new supervisor. But let me tell you about the impact of this. This now puts our supervisors in against data centers. We're looking at it as Supervisor Jefferson, Stewart, and Vega. Vega has been against the data centers outside of the overlay, and now Supervisor LaCroix, all against data centers. That at best makes it 4-4. Supervisor Gordy, he hasn't been the king of no. There's a little sarcasm. A lot of times people go, I don't get your sense of humor. I'm like, there is sarcasm in my joke. He's done well at times, and he's not done well at times. So it's just the way it is. And, we're hoping that for the rest of the next 19 months, that we finally take Chair Jefferson's advice and learn to say no, so that we could say yes to better things. And we start to hear the vision. We start to hear I know Supervisor Stewart's got a vision. I know Supervisor Jefferson is working on a vision. I know Supervisor Yesley. They all want to see Yesley Vega has a vision. We want to see great growth. We want to see nice things brought into our community. We want to see a peaceful community. Um, and this really starts with the supervisors. We want to see a stoppage to the proliferation of data centers. But I'm going to say it all comes down to you. If you don't go out and you don't pay attention and you don't have your voice be heard and you're not engaging with your friends and you don't even know that there's planning commissioners meetings coming up and supervisor meetings and you're not watching them, then things are just going to run through quickly and you're not going to recognize the community that you live in. So it's important to protect your backyard, and it's important to stand up for truth and to stand up for justice. And it's important to look out for your neighbors. So another great week. We'll be back very soon. Spring's almost here. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. I'll talk to you guys very soon.